Of course, is the question about how revenues are collected and received, and especially where we have to supplement ordinary revenues with external loans and grants. And so the timing of when the external loans and grants are coming kind of like leads to a delay in which, the time that we are able to receive those revenues. But I think on the other side, we also have preferential payments that are fast charged, that we always have to make sure that we take care of. This is the pensions, the salaries, and also the payments that we try to be as up to date as possible. Now, some of the things that, of course, do affect our revenue collections, as we would know, it is the economic performance, which, of course, does significantly impact our collection of revenues in terms of the target streams that we have. It is also the timing, as I've said, of the receipts of loans and grants, and also issues that, for instance, that we cannot predict, like the COVID situation, where we have had also to incur expenditures to deal with a situation that we did not foresee. But having said that, what we are also doing in this improved automation that we are doing is also to improve our cash flow planning and also our procurement planning, so that we relate the two as much as possible, so that we can match the availability of resources with the needs for resources. The third item that we were asked to respond on is non-engagement or late involvement of the AG in contracts. But Chair, with your permission, that has been dealt with by the Attorney General's Office, the Solicitor General. The fourth one also has been dealt with by the Solicitor General, which is non-settlement, delay in settling court awards, and the role of the Attorney General. The fifth item is inadequacies, of systems and structures for effective audits and oversight of national defense and security sector. But Chair, I believe that is best dealt with by the Auditor General, if you permit, because it's an issue about effective audit. Now, the sixth item is very closely connected with the second item, and this one is about the shortfall in collections of revenue and revenue arrears, which has adversely affected exchequer releases and budget execution. I'm reading verbatim the letter from your office, Chair. And so our response to this is that the revenue performance that we have recorded over the years, we have been tracking it very closely and ensuring that our revised budgets, which are done as we get nearer the year end, to be able to reflect what we believe is likely to be the outcome. We have very closely tracked that outcome. And so, in general, what I can say first is just to reflect back. In 2014-2015, our ordinary revenues grew by 12.3% from the previous year. And I'm going to take us through just a quick review of how the revenues have been growing. Ordinary revenues in 2015-2016, they grew by 11.7% from the previous year. The following year, a better increase of 2016-2017, the ordinary revenues grew by 13.4%. In 2017-2018, we decelerated, and the ordinary revenues grew by 4.5%, which is below now what we had been recording, which was double-digit levels, but now we are 4.5% in 2017-2018. 2018-2019, we remained at single digit. The growth was 9.9%. And Chairman, Head of Public Service, as expected during the COVID year, in 2019-2020, the growth was 4.9%. It was single-digit growth, but there was growth. Now, what we've also been watching very closely is our ordinary revenue as a percentage of GDP. And for a while, it was about 17. So 2014, 2015, we were able to record 17.7%. In 2015, 2016, we were still at those levels, 17.2%. In 2016, 2017, again, same level, 17%. That is ordinary revenue as a share of GDP. 2017, 2018, 16.1%, going down. And then almost going down again, 2018, 2019, 16% as a share of GDP. And 2019, 2020, 15.5% of GDP. So the lesson here is that we've been trying as much as possible through various reforms to ensure that we keep our ordinary revenues growing year on year, but also at the same time achieving a reasonable level as a percentage of GDP. So what we have also been doing is to work very closely with the Kenya Revenue Authority. We did initiate a revenue enhancement initiative, we call it REI program. That was in 2017, 2018. And these initiatives are the ones which have kept and held on to the revenue performance, where we have focused on the procurement of scanners and full integration of all the scanners, so that when imports and exports are being done, we capture them properly. Also rolled out integrated customs management system, we call it ICMS. And also we have completed acquisition of e-seals for regional electronic cargo tracking, that is the REX. Also we have worked with KRA to roll out the iTax and various other reforms that we've had. Last year, one of the big reforms was the fast-tracking the cases which are pending at the Tax Appeals Tribunal. And this has been very useful, especially in 2021, in making sure that we reduce the backlog of tax disputes. That is what I would like to say about revenues and exchequer releases. But let me also go to the seventh item, Chairman, which was an issue about the stock of incomplete stalled projects and the rising pending bills and payment approvals by the Office of the Control of Budget. So what we have done is to take a stock of pending or rather stalled projects, and here we have asked all the MDAs to supply that information in a template, which we did prepare, and I want to report that that exercise has been very successful, and we have received that information, and we are now automating it using a system that has been written by our own people. This way, we are looking to make sure then that we are able to capture all those projects, and through our public investment management regulations that were approved by Parliament, we should also be able now to ensure that we have got an efficient and effective public investment management framework that will reduce the extent of stalled projects, to make sure that we identify projects properly, we plan for them properly, we carry out pre-feasibility study before the projects get onto the budget books. We carry out feasibility studies thereafter, we select and budget for them appropriately, and so on and so forth. So we've got a systemic and very clear framework of how we are going to deal with the stalled projects, and also to avoid generating them in future. And so what then we are also doing is to make sure that the Integrated Public Investment Management Information System, we call it PIMIS, will offer an IT solution which is anchored and integrated with IFMIS so that we can have a proper flow in regard to how to manage the stalled project. We've also, in the 2022-23 budget, we are planning and making sure that we prioritize the ongoing and stalled projects, and this way then through also the sector working groups that we are engaging in, and having discussions now, we will make sure that we fast-track those as much as possible. This obviously ties in with item number 7, actually number 8, where the question was about unsecured government lands with no ownership documents and the development of the National Fixed Asset Register, where again we have already collected and obtained information using a template from all the MBAs on the fixed assets that they have. And we are currently inputting all that in an ICT platform so that we can be able to track them and make sure that we've got a live and a continuous fixed asset register that we can use. On number 9, it is strategies for enhancing audit and oversight as investigatory tools for successful investigation. And what I would like to report is that we give access to all the investigative arms of government to IFNIs as and when they need that access. And I have not come across a situation where we have denied them access at any one time. And when Khalid is here and Nordin is here, they can actually speak if that has been a problem. The last point, Chairman, is that on delays and non-implementation of the recommendation of PSC, and also strategies to enhance the role of judiciary in public accounting or other public accountability interest matters. So with regard to the question about implementation of PSC recommendations, I want to report that the National Treasury ensures that we immediately convey your recommendations to all the accounting officers once those recommendations are made available to us. And we are also clear that accounting officers are required to implement those recommendations made and indicate the status on actions taken. And so we have continuously provided reports with regard to the progress with regard to that. So with respect to the 10 items, Chair, which we were asked to respond on, that is the end. But allow me to just mention one item that has arisen from the floor, which is the question about supplementary budgets. But here, let me just say that in view of the unpredictability and the uncertainty of the environment, you do an original budget, but then events happen that were not foreseen. You have desert locusts coming, you've got rains, which create havoc sometimes, we've got floods, we have the COVID, and every other time there is something that was not foreseen. And so for us, we try as much as possible to make sure that we align our budgets to reality, and that is why we come up with a revised budget, but we'll endeavor to try to make sure that the budgets are done as early as possible to avoid a last-minute supplementary budget. I thank you, Chair.
Let us applaud Dr. Muya once again. Let me now invite Madam Nancy Gazungu, the Auditor General, to come and share with us her insights.
I need something.
Yes. Welcome, Madam. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. The chairperson or the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, Honorable Opiyo Wandai, the vice chair, Honorable Nduku Kikombali, honorable members of the committee, Solicitor General Ken Ogeto, Head of Public Service, Head of Public Service and Secretary to the Cabinet, Dr. Joseph Kinyo, Dr. Margaret Nyakano, PS, National Treasury, Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Nurdin Haji, the Chief Executive Officer and Secretary to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Mr. Twalib Barak. Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by thanking the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly for bringing us together as key actors in financial management and oversight to discuss accountability and fiscal management issues that affect this country. Indeed, when institutions work together, when they sit down and discuss issues, when they agree to solutions, and most importantly, when those solutions are implemented, then we can see change. I am happy to note that this roundtable meeting has been necessitated by the issues that public sector entities have been facing and the issues that we have reported, which have been examined by the Committee of Public Accounts, reports approved by the National Assembly, and resolutions made. And indeed, this is a testament that the work of the Auditor General is relevant, is credible, it adds value, and it has impact. So I want to start by thanking the committee that they have finalized reports up to 2017, 2018, and they are currently discussing or holding public hearings on the reports that I've issued for 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 concurrently. Indeed, if the plans we have in the office work out, we hope by December you shall receive the 2020-2021 report. My office is mandated by Article 229 of the Constitution of Kenya to audit the accounts of all entities funded from public funds, both at the national and the county government level. Indeed, apart from the accounts, the most critical thing the Constitution requires of me under Article 2296 is to confirm whether public money has been applied lawfully and in an effective way. In public sector accountability, as much as we talk about having clean audit opinions, qualified or unqualified, the most and critical issue is whether those resources have been applied lawfully and have brought change and beneficial change to the people of Kenya. So ultimately, as an office, we have defined our mandate to be as critical partners in ensuring the development of this country and sustainable and quality service delivery to the people through playing our role of audit and oversight. Honorable Chair, the institutions represented here are important and strategic players in the national integrity and accountability system for holding governments accountable for focused development of this country and again, sustainable and quality delivery of services. As the supreme audit institution of this country, we hold the executive, yourself, the parliament, and the judiciary accountable for the execution of the budget by ensuring that on behalf of the citizens, users of public services, and other stakeholders that the three arms of government manage use resources legally and responsibly for the purpose intended in an economical, efficient, and effective manner. We report to Parliament and the relevant county assemblies, as was pointed out by the Vice Chair, Honorable Anduku. And the reason is that the accountability cycle starts and ends with the people through their elected representatives. You represent the people, you pass the budgets that promise to bring a difference to their lives, and you also receive the accountability reports where you examine and go back to the people to assure them that yes, indeed, their lives will change or have changed for the better. And our audit reports and the recommendations made by Parliament provide valuable input in ensuring that all goes well with regard to public sector management, with regard to the resources that we have. So it is important that we work together and improve interagency collaboration to create synergy and appropriate responsiveness amongst ourselves. Indeed, honorable ladies and gentlemen, such meetings as this should not end without resolutions that are implemented at the shortest time possible. Otherwise, we would all be saying that we wasted resources, and in my next audit report, this meeting would be an audit query. I hope that is not where we are heading to. Honorable Chair, in the letter that you wrote, you raised a number of issues, and indeed, through the discussions that have been taking place and the presentations from my colleagues, a number of issues touching on accountability of public funds have been raised, and I wish to address some of the key areas, especially those that relate to my work and which I have raised in the audit reports. Indeed, when you gave your address at the beginning, it was almost like you were reading my summary report on national government, issue by issues. Starting with the Integrated Financial Management Information Systems, I am glad to hear that the PS has reiterated and has communicated that change is taking place, that the IFMI system is being strengthened, it's being looked at, and it will provide accurate financial reports. Most of the areas that we query the financial reports on is with regard to balances that basically seem to come from another system, not the IFMI system. We get financial statements with figures, we go to the IFMI system, we generate the same components, and we find that they are different. Lack of reconciliation, or, as we have found out in some areas, people working outside the system. So we carried out 2 main audits on the system, and the PS has indicated. The first was in 2010-2014, where we looked at IFMI's effectiveness for the period 2010 to 2014. We also carried out a special audit on IFMIs in 2019. A draft report was issued to the National Treasury, and that is what the PS has been talking about, that they have been implementing, they've been taking action, and we shall evaluate this. I was whispering to the PS that indeed from here, after making that promise, after talking of I don't know how many points out of 30 that he has implemented, then the next step will be to evaluate the impact of that, and then we proceed on. The government deployed IFMIs more than 18 years ago. It is not a new system. And one of its main objectives was to improve on financial data recording and tracking and information management. It was designed to provide a full cycle, end-to-end integrated approach covering the whole public finance management cycle. At least all the modules were required to do that. And 2 key benefits that the government anticipated was improved financial controls through reliable and timely financial information, and improved accounting, recording, and reporting of financial aspects through timely and accurate provisions of financial data. Indeed, I have to say, we have come a long way, but these benefits are yet to be fully realized, despite the system undergoing several re-engineering interventions in a bid to improve efficiency and effectiveness in public financial management. We are yet to reach there. And the interventions that the PS has alluded to, we hope they are aligned to the actual root causes of the problems that the system has brought to the entities or that is facing. And heavy investments have been made, including in training accountants, finance and procurement officers in the use of IFMIs, both at the national and county governments level. We need to see value for money. I would say, it's a robust and reliable system if used well. If used well, and I have to emphasize on that. However, we've noticed some weaknesses, and these are weaknesses that mainly are contributed by the human-system interaction. And this is where we need to lock in IFMIS as an automated system with minimal human interactions, with minimal manual processes. For example, what the controller of budget was talking about, the manual link with the controller of budget approval process, whereby now people later go and change what she approved for payment, and they pay others. So those are some of the areas that need to be addressed, and I'm glad to hear that those are the areas that you're looking at. We shall evaluate in due course and make a recommendation or provide a report to Parliament on the change that has taken place. There are areas where users may and have exploited the system controls. This needs to be addressed. There are areas where we are concerned, and I did raise this matter with the head of the Central Bank of Kenya, Dr. Patrick, that soon we shall be invoking, or I shall be invoking, Section 22 of the Public Audit Act and move to the judiciary to seek orders to follow transactions to people's individual accounts. Because if there's manual intervention, if the people required to be paid are not being paid, if the counties, for example, or the entities, or even the MDAs tell us that they've paid and cleared pending bills, but then the very vendors and suppliers come and tell us that the money never reached their account, then we need to find out which accounts does this money end up in. So, some modules that would enhance its capability have not been activated. I want to speak to the issue of inventory and asset management. The policy is out. PS, let it be implemented with immediate effect. There has been training, there has been sensitization. Sometimes you don't give people time to understand or to assimilate. You require of them to move in, prepare asset registers, and those asset registers be uploaded immediately to IFMIS. So to improve on the system, generally, there are some recommendations that I've been making, and I've spoken this with the PS. I've discussed this also with the head of public service. I've discussed this with Parliament, that we must migrate to accrual basis of accounting. An automated system is only as good as how the manual system was, because first you develop the system and then you automate it. You don't bring in an IT solution and then try to force it to create a system for you. So we must move to accrual basis of accounting. This is critical to the accountability process and will inform the government decision-making from a whole of government perspective. It will assist the government to provide comprehensive accounts of the use of resources and the assets and liabilities. A government such as ours should be able, at the touch of a button, to say, what are our assets? What is their value? What do we owe in terms of our liabilities and pending bills? Unfortunately, as it is now, it would probably take a special task force or a special audit for us to determine what we owe or what we own. This will eliminate pending bills, eliminate reflection of commitments in financial statements, and I have to say this, that quite a big percentage of the pending bills being reported are commitments. I think it was the CEO of EACC who said maybe he has given an order or an LS or an LPO for supplies, but that order has not been filled, he has not received the equipment. But what happens is we recognize that as a pending bill. And we must start recognizing the pending bills for goods received or services rendered. So in the report that I will be issuing soon on pending bills, those are some of the areas that I will be addressing. how do we ensure that we recognize what is actually owed instead of what we anticipate to owe? It will also eliminate backdating of transactions, and it will lead to provision of real-time reports, as below-the-line ledger will not or will be non-existent. That has already been addressed by the Controller of Budget. Migrating to accrual basis will also enable the use of unutilized components. Again, I allude to the National Assets and Liabilities Management Policy. It will provide an opportunity to enable the inventory and asset management module, and will enable tracking of assets and inventory in real time. All the entities require that. And of course, we must minimize human interactions. Honorable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, with regard to delays and non-release of exchequer and under collection of shortfall in collection and revenue arrears and under reporting of revenues, this we know is one of the reasons or one of the causes for delayed exchequer releases and skewed, if we could say that, budget execution, where we keep reporting that there is underperformance or there is under-absorption of the budget. We note that the National Treasury delays in disbursing funds to ministries, agencies, and county governments, especially in the first quarter and the last quarter of the financial year. This basically means that entities at the national and the county level do not have the full 12 months to implement their budgets or their work plans. 3 months in the first quarter, 3 months in the last quarter are delayed. Then there's a rush in the month of June or July for activities to be implemented, and then you have a myriad of problems. People spending very quickly, people spending on the wrong work plans because of the fear, if I could use that, and I think the EACC CEO said the same thing, that they will return money at the end of the financial year. In the preparation and submission of financial statements to me for audit. Because if in the month of July entities are still spending, then what time do they have to close the financial year and prepare the financial statements for submission to the Auditor General? Again, the question I must place before you is that if we are spending in July, why do we account for it in the previous financial year instead of the current financial year? So those are questions that the PS Treasury and his team require to answer and to address and guide the entities, because I would not be raising audit queries on those areas if there was a proper and streamlined guideline on what should happen. Indeed, for example, if I use the 2019-2020, exchequer releases totaling about 61 billion were received by about 12 NDAs in the month of June. How do you spend 61 billion within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks, without causing a few problems? So that requires to be addressed: cash flow planning and release of funds to the NDAs. Again, we must also look at how we are releasing funds. I know funds are released quarterly, but some cases are unique. If it is a project that requires spending of maybe 70% in the first quarter, should they not get that amount of money in the first quarter? Because, as someone told me, I think we were discussing with the head of public service. If I have to buy one vehicle and you give me money for half a vehicle, am I able to buy half the vehicle? That is just an example. So let us look at cash flows. Let us look at the quality and accuracy of fiscal forecasting and revenue forecasting. I know the PS has talked about the growth in revenue, but he should have also compared with the budgeted revenue, because we have seen always some understatement or revenue shortfall. And we must be as realistic as we can, such that we forecast with proper figures, and then we require of the MDAs to prepare budgets that are also realistic. Otherwise, the pressure will never ease on the need for exchequer releases. Look also at the failure by receivers of revenue to transfer all collected revenue to the exchequer by close of the financial year, or as and when they collect, because this also may delay the exchequer releases. With regard, Honorable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, to the non-engagement or late involvement of the Attorney General in contracts execution by the MDAs and the irregular use of private legal counsels, I think Ken Ogeto has addressed that very comprehensively. But my concern is on the areas where the government is always exposed when it comes to negotiation of contracts. That we are exposed to high litigation risks arising from contracts that are not structured to benefit the citizens. These are contracts with skewed legal provisions on charging of interests and penalties on the part of government, and there is inadequate reciprocal protection for non-performance or delayed performance. So we have raised numerous issues on non-performance by contractors, on issues of abandoned projects, and where the government is losing funds which could have been avoided if controls were tightened in terms of contract management or contract execution, or even when contracts are being drawn. We have also looked or raised issues where we find lack of coordination for multi-agency projects, where the performance of one agency is dependent on timely delivery by another agency, leading to either projects or assets or stored projects or white elephants, until a subsequent agency is able to complete its projects. With regard to inadequacies of systems and structures for effective audit and oversight of national defense forces or security sector, Honorable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, the defense and security sector entities are subject to audit by the Auditor General, as provided for under Article 229, 4, 5, and 6, and Part 4 of the Public Audit Act 2015, and various enabling legislations relating to these entities. The regulations in public finance management, national government, especially Regulation 98, 5, and 7, provides that with regard to confidential expenditure in respect of which particulars and purposes cannot be made public, that the expenditure is supported in the accounts by a certificate and a declaration by the Cabinet Secretary and the accounting officer responsible for the entity, and that the money is paid and expended properly and not used to supplement the emoluments of any officer. Indeed, the accounting officer is required under a closed-door session and is permitted to disclose to a special joint committee of Parliament and the President information or any other document on the nature of the confidential expenditure. And the accounting officers in the security sectors are permitted by the Regulation 98 to classify an expenditure as confidential if public disclosure of the particulars and purpose of the expenditure is likely to prejudice the security, the defense, or international relations of the government, among other issues. With regard to how I carry out my audits, the entities have been providing information during audits, records, documents, data required for audit to the extent permissible under Regulation 98, 5, 6, and 7. And what I've been doing internally is that the established protocol within the office is I nominate in writing specific officers at senior level or above, maybe manager or above, to examine the underlying documents in support of the confidential expenditure. You are aware, Honorable Chair, that I submit my report under confidential cover. The main challenge in the audit of entities under defense and national sector, I'll have to say, is developing and sustaining trust between the auditors and the staff of these entities, because they have the honors to protect the nation and they have the honors to determine that the people they are divulging this information to will not release it, as they say, for use by our enemies. On my part, we are engaging with the management of the security organs with a view to demystifying and explaining my role, the purpose of the work we do, the significance of the audit findings for improvement in the performance of the operations and achievement of their mandate. Indeed, we are currently doing joint trainings where we take them security sector on what our roles are, on our audit process, on how our audit reports are finalized, on the issues raised and the impact, and they're also training us on how to deal with security-related information. Now, the challenge that I would place in the hands of Parliament is when the security sectors determine that expenditure is classified, to assist in effective oversight of the sector, Parliament may need to hold discussions with the management of the security sectors and identify or determine the parameters of confidential expenditure in the budgets of the security sector. And from there, once this is well defined, then the audit becomes easier. With regard to incomplete and stalled projects, Honorable Chair, members, ladies and gentlemen, the government has continued to incur very huge expenditure on projects which had either stalled or had remained incomplete long after their completion dates have elapsed. What is even more glaring is that some of these projects are attracting penalties due to delays in payment of completion certificates, the so-called pending days, of milestones already achieved, while others have been revised to amounts higher than the original contract sum, leading to cost escalations. In some instances, we find that these projects remain idle, they are delayed, and then there's termination of contract, the contractors rush to courts, and they are awarded heavy awards, and then we have a perennial cycle. The entities now seek new contractors, and there's cost escalations on these projects. So this needs to be addressed. Payments have been made for projects which appear to have been completely stalled, casting doubt on value for money. And this area, I cannot overemphasize, needs to be addressed. With regard to pending bills, we are currently undertaking an audit on pending bills, but it's specific to counties, and we are doing it differently. We are not just determining what is payable, what is not payable. We are actually drilling down to determine what the root causes are, because if these issues are not resolved now, then every year there will be a request on the Auditor General to carry out a special audit on pending bills. We have to find a solution once and for all. Now, with issues of pending bills, and that's why I've requested or I've recommended that we move into accrual accounting, we've noticed that the pending bills or the closing balances of pending bills in a previous year are not taken into consideration during the formulation of the budget for the subsequent year because of the budget cycle and the budget planning cycle and the execution of the budget cycle. And this means that the subsequent year's budget is unlikely to be sufficient to settle unpaid bills brought forward relating to the operations of a previous year, and at the same time fund the programs. Indeed, Treasury circulars require that pending bills be a fast charge. But I know entities or accounting officers may be hesitant to do that when they have operations to run during the year. But this needs to be looked at so that it is enforced and it is implemented. and where there is improper conduct under PFM Section 74 on failure to pay eligible bills, then National Treasury requires to take action. We all know the problems with pending bills, that it required even a special funding passed by Parliament to pay these bills, and yet we still did not see full payment. Controller of Budget will tell you that she keeps calling me almost every 2 days to ask me where is the report and whether some figures are actually there or not. With regard to unsecured government land with no ownership documents, we have raised this again and again, that the government has put up developments on land that has no ownership documents. The government also owns idle land, which is exposed to illegal encroachment, irregular excising and hiving off, and fraudulent sale and grabbing. With a policy on assets and liabilities implemented, then we can preserve the government assets. With regard to strategies for enhancing audit and oversight as investigatory tools for successful investigation by EACC and prosecution, the Public Audit Act allows me to report where I suspect established there is fraud or corruption. I may invite or report my findings to the National Police Service, to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, or the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. And what we have done is established a cooperative framework with the EACC, where we regularly share and transmit information between ourselves on areas of suspected fraud and corruption. The ODPP will also tell you that sometimes they may require us to work jointly with EACC to look at issues, especially with regard to finances, so that there is proper interpretation of what the reports are speaking to. So we can only enhance on this cooperation. The DPP is talking of giving me teeth. I think my reports should count for something, because they rely on my reports when they carry out prosecution. They rely on my reports when they carry out further investigations. And those further investigations, EACC will tell you that I have to give him some of my staff sometimes to sit with, especially to interpret issues of finance. So we shall continue developing mechanisms of sharing information and documents as we carry out our investigations. With regard to non-implementation or delay of the PSC recommendations and strategies on enhancing the role of the judiciary in public accountability interest matters, Honorable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, an audit report is only as useful or value-adding if it is implemented and if it leads to change. Otherwise, year in, year out, you'll have the report of the Auditor General, you'll have a lot of headlines in the papers, and then when interest moves to another area, that dies down and public resources are misused, they're not adequately accounted for, and we move on to another cycle of the same behavior. But I am glad to note that in the report, and I did receive, and I saw the recommendations that I need to. I also saw the PS National Treasury send a circular to all the entities in national government requiring of them to give feedback on the action they were taking, including a template on how that feedback is going to be. And that will be the area that I'll start with when my teams move in to audit the 2020-2021. So that is progress in the right direction. So implementation is critical. Offenses identified need to be, sanctions need to be implemented or need to be applied. I'm glad that there is an attempt or there is a process to amend the Public Finance Management Act with regard to sanctions, and we hope this will happen, and then maybe we can see change. Because we can talk to people, we can train people, we can hold meetings, but if they will not take action, then action needs to be taken on them. So with that, Honorable Chair, I think I have addressed most of the issues that were raised. With regard to the judiciary, we have not engaged much. Of course, now, if you're going to invoke Section 22, we shall be engaging, but we'll build on those areas. Thank you very much.
Let's give her proper applause. And as we prepare to usher in the head of public service, let me just make an announcement. Since you have been sitting for too long now, we need to stretch ourselves, but not now. Immediately after the head of public service has finished with his remarks, we have been advised, the heads of the various sectors and the members of parliament and everybody else to walk out a little bit, and there'll be a group photo. Then we shall come back immediately for the very short plenary session before we conclude and to depart. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and honor to invite Dr. Joseph Kinyua, the head of the public service, to come and make his remarks. Welcome, Dr. Kinyua. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Honorable James Wadanyi, Honorable members of Parliament that are here, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity first to really appreciate this meeting, because as indicated by PA's National Treasury, the Budget Controller, and the National Audit Office, this is a very key meeting in terms of bringing together those who should ensure the resources we take away from the people by way of taxing are used for what they are intended. So it is a very, very good meeting, and for that reason, Chair, we do appreciate you being able to put us together. I would like to express my appreciation to get an opportunity to participate in this important roundtable meeting, which is reflecting on key policy issues that have arisen out of reports of the Auditor General and the deliberations of the Public Accounts Committee, and also institutions, others that are responsible for looking into how we have utilized the public resources. The question of prudent management of our public resources is indeed very important, and this is why if you look at our Constitution, Chapter 12, it does emphasize, because everything else we may be saying we are going to do, unless it is underpinned by prudent use of our financial resources, we will not be able to achieve the agenda which the government has set for the people to make their life better. For this is the most effective way of helping the government to achieve what it has promised the people in the context of the medium-term plan, or in our case currently for the last 5 years, focus on the Agenda 4. In order to achieve the above objectives, the government has been very keen in strengthening key oversight institutions. I know the issues have been raised regarding the question of, I think, funding particularly for the judiciary, which I do actually sympathize with them. We had a meeting not too long ago with the judiciary, and they did bring out quite a number of issues, and I can tell you even the president was very, very much concerned, and he felt the three arms, if they have to be able to move the way we need, they also have to be resourced properly. And the same applies to, if it is our National Audit Office, they can't be able to do what we want, for them to ensure that the resources that we as Parliament has approved for use, they're able to follow in terms of the use of that resources in accordance with what was expected. And the same applies to the controller of the budget, our institutions that are supposed to do the investigation and the prosecution, so that they can follow and ensure if there is still some bad tomatoes, we are able to follow them and recover that money. So that question of resourcing them, it is not a subject that actually should be debated at all here. It is one which we need to ensure we help them to be able to help us to achieve what we intended to achieve. Spontaneously, the government has been setting out and enacting the relevant. When I say the government here, I don't mean just the executive arm of the government, because it's the two, the parliament, because the executive would originate, but at the end of the day, it is the parliament that would put in place the relevant laws that we need to ensure we fast track if it is matters to do with the accountability of our public resources, because it is very, very important. Also, ensuring that there are guidelines intended to guide on how we can be able to ensure what is being done is done in a manner that will be sustainable. And a period like this, when we are facing the COVID, which has made, of course, denied the Treasury. You heard what Treasury did mention, revenue growth of 4 point something, which is positive, because when you look at other countries, including giants like the United States, you know, they have registered negative growth of their GDP, meaning the revenue must also have gone down substantially, because if the base is affected, then indeed you can't expect them to be doing any better. So there we feel as a country, and we have been cited by institutions like the World Bank and the IMF to actually have been doing fairly well. But I do agree we still have room, save for, you know, situations like that of the COVID, to be able to improve our revenue and do much better to support the development agenda. I wanted to also touch a little bit on what has been said without, you know, appearing to repeat. When Chair, you made your presentation, you did mention quite a number of issues in the area of budgeting and the question of taxation, and I think that was raised by the National Audit Office. This is where, given Muya is here representing the Treasury, on the question of a tax that you program every year, it is very, very important. I think the issue coming from the Auditor General to be, not again be very optimistic, because the moment you do that, first of all, you're also making the spending units begin to think like we have enough revenue and that we can be able to do. So I know, having been in the Treasury, during my time, we used to be very difficult. We say we will not show figures which we are not sure whether we will achieve. And I know my technical team sometimes they would come up with very figures which I would ask them, just show me what is it that is going to be so different. And they were based on what we may not have been able to collect, where they are almost giving in 1 year, we realize 100% correction of tax arrears that should have been made. And I would ask, what is it that the basis that you think now will be more effective in executing and realizing those revenues? And you realize it was pure theoretical. They didn't quite have, you know, what it takes. It's good to be pessimistic. And by so doing, you are able to also have a way of containing, again, the aversion to do what might create a problem for you. So it's an area where I think we should take positively, look into what is being recommended and help to streamline, so that at the end of the day, even if people say you are a bad guy, you are described, because those were the names we are being called. I borrow a little from the Germans when we were with Honorable Mudavadi as our Minister for Finance. We visited Germany, and we went to see the head of their central bank, they don't call it central bank, they have another name, but it means a central bank. And we were very excited by his comment where he said, you know, you guys, the minister was there and the governor of the central bank, that, you know, for you, the two of you, first of all, you're not supposed to be friends. So the moment you are friends, you should know the economy will be going into the... But of course, he said, he mentioned to them, it's not that I'm saying you are supposed to be enemies. It's to ensure you don't go and then agree on what can drive your country in the wrong direction. And we have examples. If you reflect back on what happened in the 90s, that is exactly, there was too much friendship between the central bank and the treasury, and that created a lot of problems, which you need not to be encouraged. On the question of still within the budget, what was mentioned, the integrated management system, I really want to take a position to say we should again beat ourselves. We have done fairly well. Those of us who have been in the system, and knowing when we started even to adopt integrated financial management system, and the challenges we had to convince our people on the need to move into that kind of a system, I feel great that now it has become, accepted. Of course, that is not to say there are no challenges. We need then to ensure how do we tackle whatever gaps there could be so that we can have a system that functions in a manner that it will help us to deliver. Share something that the younger people may not know. In the 90s, I had just come back from the IMF, and we were trying to help because I went to the central bank to help the treasury and even the state house to have an office of the president to have computers. And it was very, very difficult because treasury had been allowed only in one department, your external resources department, and then now in the department of debt management. That was the only office that was allowed, and for limited use. The reason being, there was that thinking that we are kind of making ourselves appear like we are dressed, but we are walking naked. This system that is giving that information, isn't it exposing us to the rest of the world? They never saw it as a system that you can even imbue security, ways of ensuring your information is still safe, that it is not anything that will be just tampered anyhow, as long as you have also credible people that you entrust to manage your system. So it is from that angle I feel we have come a long way and have been able to convince. And I'll tell you one more example, the judiciary. Judiciary was one of those under a comprehensive governance reform program that we had adopted in the early 90s as part of the reforms that were put in place. And the whole question of automation was so key. Do you know we got resources from the World Bank to support that reform agenda? And judiciary said they will not touch a single penny because they didn't believe in it. They just believe in, if it is a case management, they just want to listen and do hard writing. And they argued the other system is unconstitutional, it's illegal. And we are telling them, no, it is we as a people who are supposed to come up with a policy, which then we translate that policy into a law, go to Parliament and convince Parliament why we need to have a law that defines we can use this system. And even for the purpose of information under that system to be used in a court, you can do that and look at other parts of the world. So when I heard the gentleman who was representing the chief registrar, I was very impressed because I can see we all have woken up to what is the right path to go. So there is good developments that have taken place, but we don't want to assume we have arrived. We still have a road, a journey to walk. A last point that I would want to bring out is the whole question of governance and in particular, corruption. You did touch on it in the context of the county government. And I really felt so happy as Parliament, because you need to really help and ensure no level of government should assume that they should have their own different way of managing public resources. Because I do recall when we were putting together the financial management law in place, some of the people we had given the responsibility to help us to put together the law, the guys who were overseeing the county government that we are going to be coming to put in place, because at that time they hadn't been established as yet, they were very, very uncomfortable. They wanted them to have their own, like, separate legislations for different counties. But we told them, my God, you know, you are in one country. The government is supposed to be one. It's only that you have levels for purpose of ensuring. If there is some challenges in terms of identifying what could be hurting people in the coast as compared to, say, the Turkana area, you have a way of appreciating what should be their priorities. But it is not that the counties are countries of their own to have their own systems. Because if you have different systems, first of all, even to talk about just one measure of our wealth, you know, gross domestic product, I was telling them, there's no way you'll be able to do that unless you have standardized definition that will be applied. How would you be doing your accounting if you're using different definitions from what the national government is using? But at the end of the day, we were able to win the battle and agreed on what we have at the moment. But in terms of that issue of accountability, I think it is a matter where U.S. Parliament has to be more forceful to ensure and let people know why did we want to have a divorce system. Is to ensure we can be able to deliver the services to our people to make their life better. But one of them mentioned during that time we were preparing that even if money is stolen within the county, there is no problem. Ati imefika huko county. Sasa nikamuuliza, you mean if the money gets to the pocket of Kenya in the county where he comes from, and it has not gone to the other people, how have we made life any better for our people? That is not the way. And as leaders, we are the ones to ensure these are, you know, issues that are sorted out. The reason why I'm taking a bit of time on the question of governance, I always give the example of one small country called Singapore, and to demonstrate the importance of good governance and protection of public resources. Singapore is a very tiny country, which even when you are landing, you even wonder whether you're going to land on land or in water. Yet, despite the fact that it's a small country, because of one, from the beginning as a nation, when they got their independence, appreciating the importance of governance and protecting public resources and not entertaining anybody regardless of what position you are in, they understood the importance of protecting those resources. And because of that, although they have no resources, you know, they don't do any agriculture, for your information. But you don't hear Singaporeans talking about that they are going begging for food relief. The reason because they have been able to use the waters around the island and their human resources optimized, and their income per capita is close to that of a giant United States. Here is a country which, if you drop it as a nation on the U.S., the U.S. will not even feel that there is anybody sitting on them. Yet, income per capita. But the fundamental reason for that is because of optimal utilization of the resources they have, ensuring those resources are used better. And it is for this reason that this issue that you brought out of governance, and here all the institutions of government, because government here share, we need to appreciate, because we are the three arms of government that have been brought here and other agencies which are part of the government. The three arms have to know, if we don't work together, that agenda of governance will not be ashamed. Both the parliament, the executive, the judiciary, supporting our institutions that are doing the investigation for us to be able to move forward. And it is indeed something that will make a difference in terms of making this nation move to the promise that if we have the promise that in terms of our vision 2030. So, Chair, let me not go beyond that, but once again to really underscore my appreciation, I believe that we should be having, even if not too often, but at least maybe twice in a year, meetings of this nature, so that we can remind ourselves where we may be failing to move as per the kind of a path we should have done. Thank you very much, Chair.
Let's give Dr. Kenyo a better applause. And that really marks the end of our presentations this morning or this afternoon. Yeah. So we are thinking that we need just to finish. After we've taken the photo, the group photo, we come back and finish, and then from lunch we just proceed. Unless, again, you suggest we can proceed with the preliminary, take the photo, have lunch, and then go. A short. Okay. I'm guided. That we can have a very short preliminary. Yes, Honorable Dr. Esele Simeo. Can we have Dr. Sally moving up here so that at least everybody can get to see you, and the media can also record what you are saying, but very briefly. Yeah. Yes.
But I want you, Chair, that usually you have the confidence that I'm usually very brief, but there will be a bit longer. The audit that we are now dealing with is 2019-2020 concurrently with 2018-2019. What I've observed is that there seems to be fewer queries in the few that we've seen. I don't know whether this means that there's now better accountability, or does it mean that the Auditor General has had difficulty in not having enough resources? But if there is that kind of difficulty, this is Kenya. We'll see it when we find people flouting around a lot of ill-gotten wealth. There is also another problem we need to look at. That's the changes in the political space that may impact negatively on accountability. Some of these things are, I think you've had statements like, that is our thief, statements like, why don't you also steal, statements like, wacha wivu, statements like, huyo mkono yake ni gam au kavu, statements like, is your money lost, statements like, that guy is not a thief, but he's strategic. Statements like, he's a better thief because he shares with us. This Robin Hood capture of our population, especially the youth, is tragic, and we need to look out for it. Kenya as a democracy is being berated by two existential risks to democracy. Where does that leave accountability? The two existential threats are populism and irrational rivalry between the arms of government. That is judiciary versus executive, judiciary versus legislature, and vice versa. These existential rival threats pose a very existential threat to the nationhood of this country. And I think we need to look at it very carefully and what we want to do from there. But if the politics is toxic, the only place we can go is down. So who will bail the cat? Public service in the past has been a stepping stone to people to join politics, and in the process has led to high cost of politics in Kenya. I dare say that one of the drivers of unaccountability is the high cost of politics, which includes the so-called Harambee spirit. That the control of budget said something we've said for some time, that the budget is made with provision for misappropriation. We need to be, as a legislature, we need to make more attention on budget making than what we've so far done, and making sure that proper resource provision for the Office of the Auditor General and the Office of the Controller of Budget. As a member of Parliament, I must take full responsibility that yes, we have been part of the problem. Perhaps we've not been part of the solution as we are supposed to be, because we have normalized corruption, impunity, and tribalism by crafting laws that abet and assist the three vices. People doing an honest day's job and earning just returns from their work are now frowned upon. Funny, an order from the judiciary, stop investigating so and so. I was flabbergasted. How do you order people to stop investigating so and so? It is dangerous. Because when they say evidence acquired illegally is not admissible in court, what about the freedom of access to information? Where have we thrown that? Because if I've got freedom to access information and I've accessed that information and brought it to court, why are you saying that I acquired that evidence illegally? Where are we going? I think we need a serious change of mindset. If we don't change our mindset as Kenyans, it's not going to be easy. We need drastic action. Like from the judiciary. If I come there and you say that until I exhaust all avenues of appeal, I'm virtually scot-free, I think that's wrong. Don't wait for me or send Okeyo Mtata to come and declare that law illegal. Just take an opportunity. When somebody is before you and they're trying to exploit that loophole, rule against them. Be brave. If you could annul a presidential election, if you could be brave enough to throw out the BBI, be brave enough to fight corruption in this country. Because those kinds of laws are what are encouraging the corruption. And I dare say, time has run out for Parliament to amend those laws. Because some of us have exploited those laws, especially the clause that says nothing can be done to you. You can still run for elective office until you exhaust all avenues of appeal. We have exploited that. Now we've packed the legislatures, both from the county level to the national level, with people with a lot of baggage on their backs. You can't expect them to change that law. The only people who can change that law, the judiciary, should, now that they have proven they are brave, we want to see one more bravery from them. Can they annul that law without waiting for us to do it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eseli. That is vintage Dr. Eseli Simiyu. He has raised very weighty issues. If there's need for response to ask from the Director General, we could maybe later. Let me recognize the arrival of the chairperson of the Public Investment Committee, the Honorable Abdul Samad Nasir. Honorable Abdul Samad Sharif Nasir. Any other comment, honorable members? But let it be brief now. Very, very short. Let me give the Honorable Dr. Eve Obara, member for Kabondo Kasiput.
Thank you very much, Chair. Eve Obara for Kabondo Kasiput constituency. Chairman, my issue is